Right, this isn't scripted, as you can see from the setup, but I'm talking about really several things today. It's going to be slightly disjointed, partly because Mike did ask me to come and talk about some of the Bibles I've designed, but I'm talking about toxic documents, and I thought, well, in the wrong hands possibly. So there's going to be a few digressions along the way, but I'm going to move from talking about toxic documents to how we can make them less toxic for people whose literacy isn't as good as it should be. And then we're going to try and move from there to apply some of those same ideas to Bibles. Toxic documents. If I show you, if you get a bit of junk mail, like I did a few years ago like that, how many of you think the flights are free? It says free flights. Anybody think they're actually free, and why not? It's the little one, isn't it, that's the giveaway. Because you know there's going to be some small print. I'm sorry, our contrast's a bit poor here. I'm just going to see if I can change. If I don't do this, then we're not going to see very much later. Now, I want... Oops, sorry. Brightness. I want less brightness, don't I? That's a bit better, isn't it? Okay. How do I get out of here? Right, okay. Sorry about that running repair. Yes, every claim, free flights, comes with terms and conditions, and we've got used to the fact that the large print giveth, the small print taketh away. Even in this one, I love the way that the small print has its own small print. In fact, I have a theory now that the larger the headline which says the small print, the smaller the print actually is when you get inside. Sorry camera, I'm going to see if I can focus this a bit better now. I don't think it's going to, is it? Good as we're going to get, I'm afraid. Designers treat the small print lightly. They call it the small print. That's a kind of a joke. You see how O2 have called it yawn, it's the small print, as if we're not supposed to read it. But of course it soon turns out that we should have read it, because you might have read recently in the press that people who thought they were on fixed price contracts for their mobile phones, including O2 customers, have discovered they're not fixed as far as O2 are concerned. They can put the price up any time they want. So you go into the shop and you carefully choose a tariff that's going to cost you £20 a month. Next month it goes up to £21 because the small print that you didn't read, that perhaps you couldn't read, allows them to do that. So Which magazine have been running a campaign on this. You don't have to read all of this, but they did a survey. 94% of 1,000 people who voted in their poll didn't realise their contracts were not fixed price. Yours probably isn't. And Which have got concerned about, is your travel insurance packing a few surprises? And are you baffled by your bank's terms and conditions? Credit card agreements in 1980 were typically about 700 words, apparently. I counted one recently from MBNA, it's 27,000 words. That's about the length of Hamlet, I believe. And this is Elizabeth Warren, who's a professor of law at Harvard, pointing out that she's a professor of law, but if you put her under oath, she doesn't know what effective interest rate she'll be paying on her credit card because she can't read it in the contract. The type's too small, she doesn't understand it. She's a professor of law. What chance do you and I have? And what chance do people whose reading isn't as good? Sorry, I thought I'd switch on to the next slide. Yeah, that's the quote. Which did a test recently to see how many people answered questions correctly about their bank's terms and conditions and how long it took them. You'll see there that the best was NatWest at 67%, so 33% of questions were not answered correctly. The shortest time was 5 seconds, the longest was 17 minutes, 36 seconds to answer a simple question from some terms and conditions. Are these toxic? Well, here's a sign from the Forbury Retail Park in Reading. I don't know whether anybody's ever parked there to go to one of those furniture shops or Staples. A colleague of mine arrived there the other day to find 3 members of the same family who'd parked their 3 cars there to do some shopping, coming back to their cars to find they'd been fined £100 each. Because halfway down that notice it says that if you leave the shopping centre, if you park and leave the shopping centre, you're breaking their contract with the car park operator and they will fine you £100. £300 because you didn't understand that the car park was just for those shops. They have cameras watching you. It's effectively a stealth clause that's in the middle that enables them to earn money from you. It's a toxic sign. The term toxic documents I've taken from this 1996 book called Toxic Literacies, which is actually it's an ethnomethodological study of some deprived families in the USA. And the author follows a particular person called Cindy through her life, trying to claim benefits, trying to get hospital treatment. And all the way along the story, she notices that it's documents that block her, that documents are the instrument through which she's refused treatment by bureaucracies. Here's a quote. What's written and not written recasts people's lives. Print is used quite literally to decide who lives and who dies. Violent acts are legally sanctioned through paperwork that's required by federal law. Now what she means by violent acts, it is violent if you need hospital treatment, your child needs treatment, and you arrive at the hospital and you're turned away. Or if you're turned away from social security benefits because you haven't complied with the letter of some requirement to seek work in a particular way or for a particular time. But if you have status, if you have money for a lawyer, then the rules don't really apply to you because they can be challenged. The same in the case of the car park. That's not a fine, it's not an official fine. It's a claim that you have a contract, that by parking there you have a contract. It's a breach of contract. You can go to court and claim that you didn't breach the contract, that you didn't have a contract, and some people have done that. But you have to be quite articulate to do that. Let's have a look at what we mean by functional literacy and who's responsible. Well, you'll see headlines like this all the time, slightly patronising in my view. 12 million workers have reading age of children. That means a lot of children have reading age of adults, of course. Number of adults in England with poor numeracy rising. Shopping mall bosses shocked at staff who cannot read or write. People were applying for jobs at the shopping mall near the Olympic Park, and they were discovering that too many of them actually couldn't do the job because of their literacy. And then we have particular literacies, like health literacy here. Recent report just before Christmas, South Bank University found or claim, I'm quite sceptical, they're over-claiming, that health information is too complex. And they claim that perhaps 50% of people can't understand the dosage instructions on aspirin. I don't believe that, actually, but that's what they're claiming. These are the figures from the International Adult Literacy Survey from 1999. It's quite old, but there hasn't, I don't think, been an international one which UK has taken part in since. Figures haven't changed hugely, but you can see that the OECD regards something called level 2, so level 3 as the minimum that we need to function in a modern industrial society. The people below this line are below level 3. So UK is here. So these people, about half of them, are above are level 3, 4 and 5. These people are below that level. Below the level at which the OECD says is the suitable minimum skill level for coping with modern life. Countries like Portugal, Poland, Chile, this is 1999, things will have changed, are even worse. Of course, the smart Scandinavians are doing pretty well, but still have a reasonable proportion of people who suffer from very poor literacy. Now, a proportion of these people perhaps will have learning difficulties, disabilities, but a proportion just have perhaps poor education. So what is functional literacy? Well, literacy we normally think of as prose literacy. That is, can I write my name? Can I read a sentence? And most industrialized countries claim very high percentages, like 98% of people can do that. But when we look at document literacy, using documents to solve problems, to sort out your life, it's a lot lower. It's between 40 and 60%. So there's a huge number who don't. Numerical literacy is even worse, and I won't go into it because I don't claim great numerical literacy myself. But document literacy is about strategic reading. So it's about when I pick up a book, I don't just start reading at the top left and go through to the end to find the answer to my question. Now, nobody would do that with a dictionary, would they? But some people do it with perhaps a user guide or something where they do want something very specific, but it's in a continuous text format. We have to search for things, we compare the benefits of different choices, perhaps from different documents, following instructions, integrating information. These are the things we're talking about that the people who are suffering from poorer literacy don't have. And it's not surprising, because if you look at the people, the numbers of people who use complex documents in their workplace in different countries, it's not all that high. You know, if probably most people here use documents in their everyday life or their work if you're working, but a lot of people don't. And you can see that, say in the USA, that we haven't got the UK here because it's not included in this diagram, but we're very similar to the US. And 60% of people are using reference books in the workplace, so 40% aren't. Same with spreadsheets or tables, fewer with diagrams and instructions. So a lot of people don't really encounter complex information in the workplace and really practice it. The average number of books in a home is very, very low. It's maybe 4 or 5, something like that. A lot of public concern, these are just 10 or so of government reports or government agency reports that have come out over the last perhaps 7 or 8 years, and there's more than this. From people like House of Commons select committees, from Financial Services Authority, National Audit Office, all looking at problems of complex information, perhaps for particular sectors like finance, but generally as well. And typical quote here, House of Commons Public Accounts Committee, England still has an unacceptably high number of people who cannot read, write and count adequately, despite spending all this money on adult basic skills through the Basic Skills Agency. Unless there are actions taken, we're storing up problems because of our financial capability. People don't understand how pensions work, how mortgages work, how interest rates on loans, and read all the stuff about payday loans where people are paying 10,000%, that sort of thing, about to be regulated. Charges are sneaked into the small print of products. We all know this. This is what we mean by toxic documents. Just going back to this sign again, I went and had a look myself at the retail park actually just last week, and quite surprised to find that actually, as those people had left Forbury Retail Park, they would have seen these signs here. Now you probably can't read it from the distance, but that says warning private land. It's a bit blurred here, but it basically says parking and leaving will result in a penalty charge. And these people have walked past those signs, so why haven't they seen them? I've walked past them and I haven't seen them. It's because I'm not looking for them. When I see a sign saying warning private land on the edge of a retail park, I think it's about trespassing or perhaps liability for if I fall over, they're not responsible. I'm certainly not looking for something that's warning me that if I leave, I'm going to be fined. So the problem is we don't walk around reading every notice and thinking through what it means for us. When we encounter new information, we need a mental schema or mental model or somewhere in our brain, you know, to locate that meaning. And just to refer to the fact there is some theory behind all this, if we were being academic, schema theory really says that you know, when we to understand the world and to understand new knowledge, we need mental schema already in place to slot it into. Very similar ideas from other areas, such as philosophy of science, talks about knowledge that's not explicit, that you can't write down, that's tacit, that we just know, that we know how to do things, we know how the world works. Nobody's explained it to us. Situated literacies. This is the idea that you heard me being a bit sceptical about the literacy statistics before, because those statistics are gathered from very specific tests, comprehension tests. Situated literacies is a theory also known as new literacies, which says, no, actually there are multiple literacies. So the person who might fail the literacy test because they don't get the comprehension strategy that's required might be very literal in some other world. For example, you know, they follow football and they're very good at reading football reports, reading the league tables, knowing exactly what's going on in that world. Or they might work in a specific area and they know the handbooks that they need to use for their part of the construction industry, or to look up how you mix cement or whatever it might be. Very specific literacies. I'll come back to that in a moment. And then there's this idea of communities of practice from the sociologist, I suppose it was Etienne Wenger, who did an ethnomethodological study. That is, this is where you sit amongst a community, become part of the community and observe from within. And he did this in an insurance office where people were dealing with toxic documents, if you like, insurance claims. And he discovered that there were two kinds of knowledge being used in this insurance office. One kind he called reified. Reification means making a thing out of something, making it solid. That is, it's written down as a manual or a procedure. Versus participatory knowledge, which is just kind of in the air in the office. This is how we always do things. It's not written down, but this is how we do it. And knowledge in most workplaces is divided between those things. So I want to plot a few encounters that we have with information that we get from people like banks and utilities that I've referred to on this sort of dimension. I'm going to do it from a generic information which applies to the whole world versus personal information which is just for us. So starting on the left, yes. If you have an insurance policy, well, you have some sort of schedule that you're sent with your name at the top, which reflects what you're insuring. So it's your contract, but it's personal to you, but it is absolutely written down. And that's what they're going to look at if you make a claim. There are also some standard business terms for the product, which aren't personal to you, but are unique to your product. Then we move up, and there's legislation, the stuff that Parliament has passed that also manages our relationship with people like banks. So it's reified, that it's written down, but it's very generic. Then we move across, and actually most people, when they think about things like insurance, don't actually read the contract, they just make assumptions. They work from habit, from memories of the past. And that's why we get surprised when the mobile phone company puts our tariff up. Because we just assumed when they said it's fixed, it's fixed. Or they go by kind of what you might call street knowledge or common sense or just what's reasonable. We did a little study with people. We've been working occasionally with a group from New Directions, which is the Reading employment service training system for people who are being trained up for jobs. And these people are diagnosed with poor literacy. And we gave them insurance policies and asked them questions like, here's your house insurance policy. You've been away for 3 weeks and you find someone's broken the glass in your garden shed. Now, to find out if you're covered, you've actually got to see whether 3 weeks is too long to be away. You've got to see whether a shed is is an outbuilding or is it actually covered by your building's insurance at all? Is broken glass accidental damage versus something else? There's quite a lot you've got to do. Some of them sort of started looking through, and so some of them, because they'd been to classes, started looking in the index, but most of them just said, yeah, I think they'd cover that. I'd make the claim. I'd phone up and see. So they were really referring much more to this kind of knowledge than to this kind, and I think most of us do that. And then we've got the sort of things I mentioned Etienne Wenger had found in the insurance office, just company practices. So when people complain to a Sunday newspaper that something went wrong with a product, they'll phone up the company and say, oh yeah, we normally let those claims through. Remember with the ash cloud business, strictly speaking, people weren't covered, but as soon as one insurance company said, well, actually, I think we ought to cover people, because how were they to know that an ash cloud isn't covered? Everybody started doing it. And what they were doing is that they weren't looking anymore at the terms down there. They were applying what they thought was common sense and would be good for relationships with their customers. They've learned now, though, you get very specific large print clauses about ash clouds. And I had one which said we wouldn't be covered for strikes, particularly by British Airways, who were mentioned by name in the insurance policy, which was bonkers. And then in between, we've got various things where you have conversations with people. You see advertising, the brand, there's various company manuals, there's various things in newspapers. So there's a whole range of things all over this grid which are working in a different way. It's not just what's written down that people actually, even companies, go by as they sort of administrate these services that we're buying. But actually what you can find is that the customer view then is really largely here. They don't know what the company's thinking, what the company's policy is. They know what they think. They've got their schedule of the policy schedule, but they probably don't read it. That's their viewpoint. Whereas the company doesn't know what the customer's thinking. They've got their own viewpoint. They don't really understand each other, and that's why you have disputes with insurance companies. If it goes to court, you only end up with the written and highly generic things. If it goes to court, forget all this, it's this that counts. This is one of my little digressions now, because I talked just now about specific literacies or situated literacies. And I came across, as I was doing a search for some of those literacies, the concept of religious literacy. And I thought, since we're here, I'll just mention it. Guardian article, Religious Literacy Matters. Education and interfaith work are no guarantee that bigotry will cease, but they make it more difficult for intolerance to be unwittingly reproduced. And what they're talking about with religious literacy is that essentially religious literacy is about understanding that religion is complex and other people might have a contribution to make. That it evolves, it's not necessarily uniform and absolute. So we learn to question the accuracy of claims about different faiths, perhaps of our own faith, and help to deepen discussion about religion in the public sphere. I found this interesting book. I don't know whether anybody knows this person, Kushla Kapichka. This is written in, he or she is Australian. The Textual Politics and Practice of Seventh-day Adventism, Literacy and Religion. It's about literate practices in our church. And one of the conclusions here is Adventist youth may be abandoning the church not because of a deficiency in the message, but because they have no meta-language, means of resistance to the array of attracting, compelling counter-texts and discourses. Kind of religious literacy, the ability to actually engage with the world rather than simply reject. It's quite an interesting book. It's about how we use the Bible, how we use Sabbath school lessons, how we treat the written word in a church which is a sort of church of the written text of the book. That's just a little diversion. Okay, some responses to this literacy gap between the toxic documents and the people who have poor literacy. Well, one of them is to simply improve everybody's skills, and billions have been put into this, and there are lots of courses available. But actually it's not making a huge difference overall, because more and more people come out of the school system not able to read and write, and more and more people don't really care about it. So it's not You can't just do that. Another one is to take a legal stand and to treat clear communications as a human right. So we have the Equality Act. It used to be called the Disability Discrimination Act. And this is the act under which companies have to give you a large print version or a braille version or an audio version of a document. It's the act under which you have to have ramps and disabled toilets. But it hasn't really matured to the extent that documents have to, even if they're in large print, actually be comprehensible. There are MenCap campaign for a system they call Easy Read, which is very, very simple language supported by pictures, because their particular shtick is that people with learning disabilities should be able to live as normal lives as possible, including controlling their own, interactions with information. And you find that easy-to-read documents are often produced by government departments, but only about very, very boring things like policy and strategy, and very rarely about actual stuff you might need to know. But it is quite interesting, quite widely used, as I say, by charities who do deal with that sector, such as housing associations and so on. Then lastly, we can simply detoxify the documents. So we can actually not accept documents that we can't understand. And this is what we're trying to do, essentially. This is where I'm getting to. So we have we've set up a not-for-profit called the Simplification Centre. And it's we have volunteers who are mostly professional designers and writers, because everybody has part of them that during the day they might be writing the stuff that goes in the back of a cornflakes packet, but really they want to change the world. So we can sort of give them an opportunity to come together for what we call hack days, rather like software people have. And we use plain English, clear design, hopefully, and as much customer insight about the journey people take through a document or through a relationship with an organisation, their prior knowledge and schemata and skills to design better documents. Now, another sort of digression. This falls into a movement which we could loosely call design for good. So accessibility comes under design for all. Design for good is professional designers such as these people called Designers Without Borders, Doctors Without Borders, anyone? But they're Designers Without Borders, and they're American designers who are working mainly in Uganda, I think, helping local designers there learn about more effective health communication and the like. This is an annual conference run by students at Brown University in Rhode Island and Rhode Island School of Design, which is all about a better world by design, bringing together projects of this kind and talking about them. This is a group called Taproot who get pro bono, give pro bono. That is an introduction agency, a sort of dating agency for people who've got professional skills they want to offer charities and charities who need them. This is one I rather like, called Orphan Projects in Design. So these are, and we're working in this tradition. This is actually a design school there in California who are taking problems that no one owns, really. No one's ever going to solve. And I don't know whether you've ever got into a lift and somebody's rushing to get in and you've got to find the right button to open the door again. You can't, can you? It hasn't changed in your lifetime. It's the same button, but you don't learn it. And there's something wrong with that button saying door open. I'm not sure what it is, because the arrows do point out, but I think it's the fact that you're looking for the state you want the door to be in, and that shows as closed. And so these are the work of students trying to address that, and I think I don't know whether they've tested them yet, but I quite like the word close and open, actually. It works for me. But the point about this, though, is it's a tradition of just something which no one is ever going to take ownership of. This is one where they, again, act as sort of dating agencies between advocates and designers, and they come up with these posters. And there's one I just want to show you, because I rather like it. I don't know whether we can turn the lights down a little bit, by the way. I'm realising that the contrast is a bit low. I don't know whether, would it be disastrous for the camera or something if we turned it down? Perhaps it might. You can probably see it, but yeah. Try it. Oh, no, that's too much, is it? That's too much, probably. You can see it better, though, can't you? What do you think? Yeah? Should we go with it? This is produced for street vendors in New York whose reading isn't very good and who may speak any language, and it's in 5 languages, and it's in a cartoon strip format to show the street vendor what to do if a policeman comes up. Take a photograph, get the badge number, phone this helpline. If you get taken to court, go to court. This is how to set up your stand, what the rules say about where the boxes can go. It's very simple pictorial communication. This is getting a little bit complex here. And this is the work of someone I hugely admire called Chang, who's a kind of activist designer and who shows how kind of my world of graphic design can get active in communities. So this is one of my digressions, because I wanted to show you her work, because I think it's rather interesting. It's not about toxic documents anymore, it's something else. We'll come back. What do you think of that? It goes on the door handle in a block of flats. Please disturb. Hello neighbour, if you ever need a ladder or tea, let me know. Your neighbour Jeff. Can I borrow things I want? This is a nice project where she made lots of stickers saying, I wish this was. I know it should be I wish this were, but I wish this was. And she got people to stick them on derelict parts of town and say what they wished. I'm in your way, aren't I? So, and people, it was rather nice to see what people chose and how various kinds of idealism came out in the choices. Some of them very pragmatic. There's a kind of spirituality coming to light in some of these, owned by someone who cared. Chinese restaurant. Brad Pitt's house. A bakery, if you can get financing, I'll do the baking. Heaven. And she did another rather nice one, another bit of community spirituality, I think, through design, where got people to come in and write a confession and stick it up. And they range from I eat too much cheese to I'm scared I'll die alone. So there's funny ones, wistful ones. And this one here is, before I die, I want to raise my children, be someone's cavalry, tell my mother I love her, live in another country, evaporate into the light, travel the world, find my mythical creature. I think it's lovely. That's Chang. You can look her up in Google. Right, end of Chang. On to simple actions. Now this is our program for improving everyday documents. And here are some of us at meeting together, and we've taken this. Now, actually, this is the kind of thing. This is a penalty charge notice which arrived in our house. I don't know why. Can you tell what this is if you open this? It just looks a bit scary, doesn't it? It's actually because somebody made the mistake of going into a bus lane, and the biggest thing says, do not ignore this notice. We've redesigned it to look like that. I won't try and fiddle with the projector again, it has gone out again. But I hope you think this is better. What do you think is better about it? Yeah, it says at the top, and it tells the story down the left. It's got the evidence, the photograph of you in your car where you were photographed. And so it's designed for what I mentioned before, I called strategic reading, where you can read down there and then you can read in when you know where you are. So that's what strategic reading is all about. It's putting a high-level access structure onto a complex text so that your roving eye can spot things and use them strategically when you need to. We've also done something we call graphic editing. So here we've moved it from legal reasoning. So what's going on here is it's saying pay the penalty charge of £60 by this date. If it's received by the council within 14 days of the service of this notice, a reduced amount of £30 is payable. Or if you do neither of these things within 28 days from the date of the service of this notice, the council will serve a charge certificate increasing the penalty by 50% to £90. What that means is £30 if you pay by then, £60 then, after that it's £90. So this is a straight kind of buy one get one free Tesco type communication. That's the legal thing, almost directly quoting from the government regulations. And so here they are side by side. We've sent this to Reading Borough Council, and they've done us the great courtesy of completely refusing, to say it's better, but giving us a 4-page detailed account of why they can't do this, which is fantastic because I'm able to go through point by point, sort of refuting each one, and they have a couple of good points which we've changed. But the next thing is perhaps go upstairs to the Department for Transport or something. But it's just to put it out there as an embarrassment, to say we think this. Tell us why this doesn't work. Not only is it better, but it's fairer because I think there's a better chance of more people being able to understand it. And the next one we've been working on is parking notices. And this is in the Daily Mail. Is this the UK's most complex parking notice in the street? So watch this space. I'm aware I'm slightly sorry. My clever idea was I've got a hidden button here. If only I can find it with the cursor. Oh, I see. I can see it here, can I? So I can move on without necessarily taking up all your time. That's it. Yeah. So I've just skipped a whole chunk here because I think looking at the way the time's going, I want to move on to think about the Bibles and have some discussion. I will show, I'm glad Leroy's here because I was going to show him some DWP letters we've been working on as well, but I think it's going to take too long. So how can I make the connection to Mike's request to talk about Bibles? Well, plain English isn't a new thing. This is Chaucer. The Clerk's Tale, Clerk being a bureaucrat, speaketh so plain at this time will you pray that we may understand what ye say. And William Tyndall famously said, I defy the Pope and all his laws. If God spare my life ere many years, I will cause a boy that driveth the plough to know more of Scripture than he does. It was plain English. It was detoxifying communication, church communication that we didn't understand because it was in Latin, that led to his efforts to translate the Bible, which we still have today, because the Geneva Bible and the King James Bible are largely descended from Tyndall's translation. What was interesting, though, if you look at, this is Wycliffe's Bible, sort of a precedent in English, that's still a medieval book. When you look at that book and you think about my parking notice, my redesigned one, I don't see many headings here. You have to read that pretty much continuously. There are chapter divisions, but not a lot of help to the reader. But if we move to 16th century, and the Geneva printer Robert SDN, I think I've left the S out. Sorry. This is the first New Testament which had verse divisions. You can see it's in multiple columns, it's got headings, it's got page numbers, it's got all the apparatus of scholarship. It's got the Greek and the Latin next to each other. And this is designed for studying. And SDN's, is also known as Stephanus, design innovations made it into those 16th century early printed Bibles like the Geneva Bible. Now it's Bible printing from which we get conventions like running heads, which tell you what's on the page. Here we've got summaries of what's in the book. We've got notes around the side. We've got cross-references, verse numbers, page numbers. All the the book at the top, Daniel. All the apparatus that invites study. And interestingly, when the authorized version came out, apparently it was known as the Bible with no notes, because these notes, have anybody ever read these notes? They're quite sort of, I'll show you some in a minute, but they're quite outspoken at times. So basically the authorized version gets rid of the notes to get rid of the controversy that comes from the notes. But it doesn't have quite the same apparatus for study. And David Daniel, who's written a marvelous book, I'm not a scholar of history by any means, so I don't know whether he's right or who's criticised him, but here is his explanation. He says, look, the authorised version was there to elevate the Bible. Geneva Bible, packed with notes. Romans has more notes than text, all cut away in the King James. The people mustn't have study Bibles. The Bible is something, as the title page says, appointed to be read in churches. It's to be read by the squire to you lot down there. So if we think about how people design Bibles, they're not all designed to be studied. In fact, have you seen these ones, wedding Bibles, which are tiny, and they're really designed to be clutched and held and given as gifts, and christening Bibles. This rather exaggerates the print size. They're tiny. It's very hard to read them because they're ceremonial. This is a lectern Bible, and this is designed to look impressive in a church. It's designed for you to see the gold, the beautiful shape it makes, and it's to be read aloud from the lectern. It's too big to carry around. Bible marketing is massive now. So we've got special Bibles for idiots over here. There's a girl's Bible. It's pink, obviously. That's the Quiet Strength Men's Bible. Large print, and the Complete Idiot's Guide to the Bible. I've also got the Complete Idiot's Guide to the Quran, by the way. So it's in the context of Bible marketing. I was asked to look at study Bibles some years ago, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move from this bit of technology, if I can get it to stop, to this bit of technology over here, which I hope will allow me to project, and forgive my messy computer screen, which is, I should really have cleared up before revealing it. Yeah, it's a bit better. Now, I think we put that light back on now. Right. So what I've got here, I'm hoping I can show this, is just one or two Bibles and just show you and reflect a little bit on what these Bibles are saying to the reader. You know, when I quoted David Daniel, I don't know whether you knew I was quoting, but when he talked about the Geneva Bible as inviting the reader in, inviting the reader to study, some of these books invite different things. So this is the Reader's Digest Bible, which kind of cuts out the boring bits, and it treats it as as sort of a good read. It's rather nice, actually. I actually quite like it. It's got some rather nice. Sorry, just trying to get this camera straight. It's not great, is it? This thing, but you can sort of see what I'm pointing at. It's quite hard to do it. You can see mostly it's just a slab of text, no apparatus for study at all. And there's another one called The Bible Designed to be Read as Literature, which was published in about 1937, which is all paragraphed and looks like a novel. Rather similar idea. My first Bible I was asked to design, this is not by me, but this is a familiar sort of Bible that you will you'll know. It's a King James Version, but it's in nice dark text, nice dark type that people like. And customers, some of the new Bibles were complaining that the type was too light, and I was asked to do a new one. It's not very spectacular. You won't think it's very special. In fact, you won't really sort of see much here, I suppose. But so this is that was my. Sorry, how do I get this down here? So that's the one that I first did. It's a long time ago now. This is about 1992 or something. And it's got type that's almost as dark as that, but it's a modern type. And you can come and have a look at afterwards if you're interested. But this was designed simply to meet that market need. It's a new international version. I think it's still in print, and there's a wide margin version you can get as well. And then we have a rather different one, which is this is the Contemporary English version, the Bible Society published in the UK. It's an American translation that they brought over, and Contemporary English version is a kind of a plain English version designed for new Christians. So the translator tries to avoid theological terms because people won't understand what a word like what grace is, for example, and so he avoids those. It actually was really originally written for children, translated for children. But it was found that adults also liked it, people who struggled with long words, if you like. And so we produced this one as a paperback. So this is just a New Testament. I'm finding it hard to keep this down. And one of the things we did here, we kept the column quite narrow so there's lots of space around it so it's easy to read. And at the top left and top right, we include what on newspapers are called pull-out quotes. So if you read a magazine or a newspaper article, often you'll find a big quote in the middle of a sort of juicy bit from the story. We've done this for every page of the Bible. It kind of tells you the story. So very early on Sunday morning, the women went to the tomb, Jesus appeared and greeted them. It's sort of telling the story using verses that are picked out from what's on that page to invite you, the perhaps not great reader, into the page and to read more. So that was the New Testament we did, and then we produced a full Bible. And one of the things with the New Testament is it's quite short, so you can do it in one column quite easily. It's harder with a full Bible because you want to keep what the Bible publishers call the brick size down to something that's manageable. And what we did here, I think this is the one Mike was really interested in. Here's a typical. This delay in the projector makes it very hard. That's the opening of a book. One of the great innovations we introduced was, you know how in a lot of Bibles you'll get headings saying what's the next section's about, which are usually provided by the translators. And then you get a summary at the beginning. You often find the headings here are not the same as the headings there. In fact, typically that's the case. And we insisted that they were the same. We got the translator on the phone and said we want to change the headings so they work with the introduction. They've got to be the same. So when it says tell the good news in Jerusalem there, it says it up there and it gives a page number here so you can get a map of the book. We've got quite bold headings. We've also got genre markers. So at the top in the running head, it tells you what kind of literature you're reading. It says poetic books here, major prophets, minor prophets, and then we've got the Gospels, and this is Acts, so it says the good news spreads, so it gives you a little bit of a map of the book. So that's a typical book. Now this is poetry, so poetry we've printed in a single column so that you can see the line endings, it looks like poetry. So this is a reflection of the genre of literature here, that it's a poem, it's going to look like a poem, it's going to work like a poem, and so you're going to receive it like a poem. And then we introduced another genre, which you can see on this page. You see what we've done there. It's gone from 2 to 3 columns here. It's the small print. We're in the middle of Numbers here, and it's going into the bit on laws and punishments. And we put that in the small print. So we've got the promise, the large print giveth, the small print taketh away. And what we were arguing here was that because this edition is designed for new Christians, do you honestly ask a new Christian to read the Bible from beginning to end as the first thing they do, including all the genealogies and all the Levitical law? Perhaps you do. But I would say they might be less discouraged if they see that that's interesting historical evidence about how the Israelites were governed at the time, but not necessarily see the specific punishments listed there as relevant, on the same level as the Gospels over here. So we're using this genre marker of moving into 3 columns for certain parts of Scripture. And we went back to the translator and we discussed this, and he got involved with which bits we should do. And while we were discussing this, obviously this was slightly controversial. It wasn't as controversial as you might think. I did find a precedent, which on one hand annoyed me because I hadn't thought of it. On the other hand, I was able to say, here's this Collins Bible that the Gideons have been handing out for years, a version of the RSV, which also does the same thing. So we weren't the first, and that gave the Bible Society a precedent. Just show you one or two others, just to. This is another of mine. This is a lovely Bible. I don't really know this thematic NIV. It's really, really handy if you preach or do studies. It's designed to be a sort of modern day. It works a bit like a concordance, but it's thematic. Concordance works. It's about the word, isn't it? A concordance. You find where a particular word is referenced. This is about themes. So if you want to take a theme like, we've got sky, Sodom and Gomorrah, I suppose that's referring to Sky Television, I don't know, spring of water, sun, and here are all the sub-themes. So we've got under sky, the sky associated with rain, the sky associated with birds, with heavenly bodies, the sky demonstrating God's power and providence. And then you can find the verses and you can build your study and around that way. And then in the Bible itself, we've got thematic references. So each verse shows you the themes which that verse can be seen as part of. So this is quite a complex bit of design to do, and that was good fun. And I got to meet Alistair McGrath and Jim Packer, who were some of the editors, and it felt quite important. This is one I bought at Greenbelt the other year. This is the Poverty and Justice Bible. This is the idea of themed Bibles. What they've done, a lot of people here use marker pens in their Bibles, don't they? Don't you? And write in them. And they've done it for you. And they've picked out the bits where if you're interested in social justice, you can flick through and find the Bible, the thematic parts of the Bible on social justice, because they've done that for you. And then, this is a study Bible did for the Bible Society. This is a version of today's English version. It's not perhaps hugely interesting, but we were able to use colour in this one for these introductions to sections. And the design is designed so that the notes sort of roughly catch up each section as we go. And sometimes some books, the problem here was that some books are very, very heavily annotated. Others, so I guess New Testament probably you'll find something like Romans has loads of notes, whereas there are whole whole pages here which don't have very many at all. That's quite an interesting one. I'll leave that for you to have a look at. This is the, I've got a facsimile of the Geneva Bible here. I just wanted to show you this because look how similar that is to some of these other ones. Look how modern it is for 1560. The standards were set then, and really, but it's not many aspects of the world where you can say that the standard still used today was set in 1560. And then I think just to conclude, this is rather nice. I love this. This is Tyndalls Old Testament, and there's a New Testament as well, which has been turned by David Daniel, who's the Tyndall scholar, into a modern spelling version, so you can actually read it. So you don't have to read through the archaic spelling. And one of the things that really comes out of this is what the notes do for you. I mean, there are times when the notes simply point, just help you understand the text, that something's poetic or ironic, for example. There's little ones which sort of taking a dig at the Pope quite often. So here's one. This is the Reformation brought alive here. So down here, if a man come presumptuously upon his neighbour and slay him with guile, thou shalt take him from mine altar that he die. But the Pope saith, come to mine altar. Okay. But this is one I if this was a sermon, I would leave you with, and it's where I'll stop. This is chapter 20 of Exodus, and we have the Ten Commandments here. And at the end it says, and all the people saw the thunder and the lightning and the noise of the horn and how the mountain smoked. And when the people saw it, they removed and stood far off, and said unto Moses, talk thou with us, and we will hear, but let not God talk with us, lest we die. The note says, the law causeth wrath, and maketh a man flee from God, but the gospel draweth and maketh a man bold to come unto God. I'll stop there. Thank you.